John Scott Shepherd, the second season of your show, You, Me, Her, just wrapped up on the Audience Network, and you're about to go into season 3. Going into the second season, what were your thoughts about deepening the central story?
Yeah, I mean, the first season had a very distinct structure, which was to build it like a classic romantic comedy. I mean, straight from meet cute to race to the airport. So pretty damn literal when you think about it. And a lot of it was having fun with that, and also the what if of it, which is like, what if that happened to me? So I wanted these people to be very grounded and sort of relatable, and like we recognize them or see ourselves or see people we know in them. And a lot of it was external conflict. But in the modern world, in 2017, particularly in Portland, in which I wanted to choose a city that I didn't want to go to Mobile or something and make it all about, the external conflict. The biggest conflict in polyamory is internal, because it's, relationships are hard. And then when instead of 2 people, it's 3 people, that's way harder. So when I looked at season 2, I wanted it to be about now what happens. When the romantic comedy fades to black, what happens after that, aside from, I don't know, Netflixing or something, sitting around the house, but especially with 3 people trying to say, hey, we're doing this, what would that be like? And because we constructed the show from the very beginning to not be from the male gaze, that in fact the most threatened and most uncomfortable person is the guy, it seemed natural for me to nudge in that direction, to male insecurity, frankly. And so it was about 3 people realizing how hard it is to get on the same page at the same time.
Where did the idea for this show come from?
To tell you the truth, I could probably make something up about, one of my playing guitar in the elevator stories or something. But I just happened to be finding myself thinking about extramarital or alternative or post-divorce romance, or romance that begins with divorce. And I was looking at different constructs, and I just happened to see a documentary, I believe, I'm not entirely certain, but I actually think it was on CNN. And that led me to looking at some articles about polyamory. And then I got sent an article where they were asking me if I was interested in doing it. The article, the subjects of the article and what their lives were did not appeal to me, because they were what I would, quote Seinfeld as saying sex people, and that wasn't interesting to me. And so I kept saying no. And finally I gave them the reason, which was I have a very different vision for this. And when I went in and we talked about it, we had one of those love fest kind of meetings, a bunch of people in a room all feeling the same show. And so when I kept going back to the what if, that really, really kept intriguing me, that would be such a difficult life choice to make. But then when you actually fell in love and it became more than about sexuality or trying to put spark in your marriage, but it surprisingly went to another level, it really started speaking to me. And when I sort of riffed off the pilot, I wrote it in that sort of fever dream kind of way. It wasn't very crafty, which is always my favorite way to write. And then I think we might be on to something that's about more than polyamory. It might be about adult relationships and choices and, your best, truest, happiest life. And do you have the balls to live it?
And in this season, you start to branch out a bit from the main trio of the trio and explore a lot of the side characters. Can you talk a bit about going deep into their lives for this season?
Yeah, well, a lot of it was we got really, really lucky. And part of that is that in Vancouver, where many of our supporting cast come from, they don't get the opportunity to do like peak half hour a lot up there, and they haven't done a lot of comedy because of the weather and everything. So they were very, very eager, and we got access to some extremely talented actors. like Melanie Papalia and Jared Joseph and Jayla Horsdale and some of these people who were on some really, really good shows. Ennis Esmer, who's amazing. And you work with them and you start to see or become more interested in how this affects them and makes them reflect on their own relationships and their own lives. And you also, I think all good shows eventually transcend their premise a little bit, and you hope to get into a story that's just about relationships and adult life. And so we got to do that.
I'm curious with the trio of Greg Poehler, Rachel Blanchard, and Priscilla Faia, exploring that relationship, because it's something that we haven't seen a lot in television. So I'm curious about what you drew upon in order to make their relationship truthful.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw that, when I'm writing it, I always see movies in my head. And so I kind of knew how, not just how they looked physically, but how they felt. And I really wanted, you know, obviously they're three very good looking people, but I wanted them to seem real. And it's interesting that the casting of these three people and their backgrounds are so diverse. You know, Greg is pretty new to acting, and it started doing improv and then had his own show, which was his very first show. He did everything on it and ran it and everything, because, you know, that's how it always works.
Right.
And but I was extremely with Greg, and that was a hard role to cast, because I couldn't have a guy that made anyone feel uncomfortable, or that he was manipulating the situation so he could be in, you know, the luckiest man on earth kind of place. And when he became available, we had a lot of interested parties, some of them fairly big names in TV. And I had a pitch the next day, and I found that out, and we were at the same agency, and I watched a whole lot of Welcome to Sweden, and I said, that's my guy. That's my guy, period. And it's one of those where everyone else is saying, yeah, but that's nice. Why don't you explore that? And I said, no. I mean, he's my guy. And so I really pushed for that. And I knew Rachel through my director friend, Scott Wynett, a little bit, and thought she'd really, really work well in that role. Priscilla was a completely different story. We found that to be kind of an X Factor role. You also have to get Izzy right, where I mean, I think she needs to be a leans in, says yes, but maybe has a little bit of damage in her past, but she's not damaged. Like, it's two different, you know what I mean? It's two different things. And it was a hard one. We went through a lot of actresses, and the director at the time, Nisha Ganatra, and I met with Priscilla after seeing her tape in a bar, and I saw Izzy. I really saw Izzy just talking to her. And I started believing that these three together would work. But you're always taking a leap of faith, because they didn't know each other at all. And we did a lot of work. You know, we did a lot of work of letting them get to know each other, and beyond just rehearsing, spending time together and doing some, you know, actor class stuff with them, and letting them get all touchy-feely with each other. And it, you know, it worked. And it felt like they were exactly who I needed them to be, a married couple. And, you know, a grad student who is, like, you know, the accidental escort, as I called her, like the world's worst escort.
Right. You set the show in Portland, as you mentioned earlier, and I know you shoot most of this in Vancouver.
Yeah.
Very convincing job, by the way. I didn't find that out till I was talking with some of your actors. Why set it in Portland? What about that city appealed to you for this story?
I'll give you three answers, and only because they're all true. First of all, I love Portland. I mean, and I've wanted to put a show in Portland for a while, and I always call it California's Maine. And I go up there, and we've gone up a few times, and I like it. Secondly, like I said, I didn't want to do the obvious, and we talked a lot about this early on. I didn't want to put it in a conservative town where it was all about, you know, I grew up in Ohio and North Carolina and Kansas City, and I have no interest in making fun of those people. And that if you take that route, it leads you into sort of vilifying the people around them. And I didn't want to do that. In fact, I was more interested in a close-in neighborhood to Portland, and they have so many really cool ones. I was more interested in people discovering that they were surprised that this was uncomfortable for them. You know, particularly Dave and Carmen, their best friends, that they thought they would be accepting of this, and they're kind of not. You know, the idea of raising their kids across from a polyamorous throuple made them uncomfortable. So that was, to me, more creatively fulfilling. And third, it shoots well in Vancouver, as you mentioned. You know,
Right.
and I didn't want to, like, I've shot Vancouver for Philadelphia, and that's hard. That's really hard. But shooting it for Portland, and we actually we went and shot a lot of exteriors in Portland because we didn't want to just use a lot of stock footage. We had some ideas of how we wanted things to look. And we're just as careful as we can be to make it not feel too Vancouver-y. But it's worked. I think it's worked, like you said. I'm glad you said that. That makes me feel very good. Nice that we sold it.
Very good job. Yeah. So I'm curious, as the showrunner, how you go about plotting out the season, and I mean, in this new fangled serialized narratives that we have in television series. Can you talk about how you plot out each episode to go with the overarching story arc?
Yeah. I feel I started as an author. I wrote, the first thing I did was write 2 novels. My first was Henry's List of Wrongs, and that's how I was raised in a family in Kansas City, and that's how I broke in. And peak TV, thank God, came to me, you know, and it feels very much like writing a novel. And you're allowed to not just do, you know, hours that are serialized, but also half hours, and you can move between comedy and drama because that's what life is really like. What was the original question?
Plotting out the season.
Yeah. So what also happens when you work in peak TV is that they don't treat it like a machine, that there's only one way it works. You know, you have Noah Hawley, who brings together friends, and they break the season, but then they go away and he writes everything. And I have friends who were involved with American Horror Story, and they do things differently. And there are a lot of shows, and so basically, I chose to write the whole thing for the most part, with a little bit of help from a couple of young writers, one being a writer's assistant. So I write the whole season, and I think of it like a book. And I have a lot of support that I deeply appreciate from AT&T and Audience Network and E1 that allows me to write the show without much interference until I go back and have my chance to go back through it as if I had written 10 chapters of a book. So that's you know, we do have an outline. I think it's probably a lot less than other writers might do. So for what amounts to a 300-page book for the season, we might do, you know, a 24-page outline that we submit before we start. And once that's cleared, I go in and sit with them for a little bit. That I go write a book. It's just like, you know, I stop showering, grow the beard, the whole thing. Tap, you know how it goes.
Yeah. That answers the question about your writing process. And one of the other things that's unique for this show is that you have one director throughout the entire season. You had one in the first season, one in the second season. What is the benefit of that, and what is that collaboration like between the two of you?
Well, it's really hard not to do it because we cross-board the entire season. We shoot it like a 5-hour movie. So we shoot out every location. We don't shoot episode by episode. The thing that helps us as far as wardrobe and actors and everyone else, including the director, is that our time frames are so tight that this whole experience is taking place, you know, if it's a 5-season series, it's going to take place over less than a year. And that, you know, every episode picks up with the last one left off. And so, you know, it's worked out pretty well. And my relationship with the directors becomes much more personal then. And, you know, I'm on set a lot, which most showrunners aren't. And we work very closely together. And Sarah St. Ange is coming back for her second go round because we worked so well together. And she's also a writer. And it just seems to have melded together very well. And I don't mind that she gets in my sandbox, and she doesn't mind that I get in hers. So it's worked very well.
Now, have you finished writing season 3, or you guys are getting ready to go into that?
Yeah, I actually finished episode 10 last week, and just began the process that is really, really valuable to me, because we write very fast. So it's like turning in an episode, to step back and go look at it as a whole, like as a whole book, like I said. And that just started literally today. I just started that this morning. And you start seeing it, and you've done some reverse engineering that's happened along the way. As you got to episode 7, 8, 9, or 10, you're going, yeah, I know I'm going to go back to 2. And writer's assistant, would you please, and they go in and mark these things on the script. And so now I have my opportunity to go back and make sure the season is a story, that it's clearly about something.
Can you give us, I know you don't want to give away spoilers, but maybe just an idea of what we can look forward to in season 3?
Yeah, season 3 is, it's big. There's some very, very big turns. I mean, I've always said I wanted it to be an epic romance. That at the end of 5 seasons, hopefully, you've seen an epic romance, even though it only lasted 10 months. That big things happen, big turns. So we do our first jump forward. That's the only spoiler I'll give.
Okay.
It's the first time that we do go forward, and that the table has been reset quite a bit, and the audience will take some time to catch up to all the changes that have happened. And it is making the choice that this couldn't possibly work. This we've seen how hard this is, and it didn't work, and we need to move on in some sort of more conventional setup. Some of them staying together and some of them not. I won't say who. And that power that's bigger than everything, including societal norms and the culture around them, that draws them back together against all odds. But it's never going to be easy. It's never, ever going to be easy. And we have some really big surprises that I think are a lot of fun.
I look forward to it. John, thank you so much, and congratulations on the 2nd season of You, Me, Her. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks so much, man. I appreciate it. Take care.
You too. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye-bye.